Regina Poverly didn't expect jury duty to be anything more than a civic inconvenience. But when she steps into the jury box and sees the defendant, she knows something is off, deep in her bones. The courtroom hums with tension, cloaked in polite indifference, but buried bias lurks beneath every glance. Will Regina stay silent like they expect her to, or will she force them all to see the truth? People thought she was just another woman doing her duty, but they were wrong. When the pressure built and truth became dangerous, she didn't fold, she stood. What would you have done? Let us know in the comments section below. Regina Poverly sat at the long oak table with a paper cup of court-issued coffee in front of her, its heat long since surrendered. She wore simple clothes, navy blazer, gray blouse, jeans pressed neatly. There was nothing remarkable about her on purpose. Her black curls were pinned up conservatively, and the only jewelry she wore was a modest gold band on her right hand. She hadn't brought a laptop. No visible books, no hint of what she really was. That was the point. She watched the bailiff hand out jury badges like they were candy, like they weren't loaded with the weight of someone's life. 12 people, randomly plucked from the public, given a few printed instructions and a bathroom break, and suddenly they were the conscience of the law. Regina let her badge hang around her neck like dead weight. "Regina Poverly," the clerk called. "Panel 3. She stood. Several heads turned. There weren't many black women in the room, and she knew it. She moved quietly, avoiding eye contact, the way she'd learned to navigate white spaces that pretended to be neutral. Panel 3 was full of polite nods and tight smiles. Older men in golf shirts. A woman with a Louis Vuitton tote that looked like it had never touched the ground. A guy with a shaved head and wraparound sunglasses tucked into his collar. Regina took her seat. She didn't say much during voir dire. Didn't have to. She'd perfected the art of saying enough to get through, but not enough to be remembered. When the defense asked if anyone had legal training, she kept her hands folded in her lap. Let them underestimate her. Let them think she was just a substitute teacher from the East Side, with a mild face and tired eyes. No one needed to know about Harvard. No one needed to know she passed the bar at 25. No one needed to know she'd walked away from the courtroom 5 years ago after her last client. A boy not much older than this defendant took a plea he didn't deserve, just to avoid life. She was here to listen, until she had no choice but to speak. "Jurors have been selected," the judge announced. "We'll begin tomorrow at 9 a.m. You are ordered not to discuss this case with anyone, nor consume any media coverage related to it." They all nodded in chorus. The defendant sat at the table like a statue. Thin, 17 maybe, skin the same deep brown as Regina's nephew. His eyes flickered from the judge to the jury, to the floor, to his hands. Then back to the jury again. Regina saw the moment his gaze met hers, just for a second, but that second felt like a scream. There was fear there, not guilt, not rage. Fear. She would know. The first day of trial opened with the cold grind of prosecution. The assistant district attorney, a woman in a fitted navy suit and sharp glasses, spoke like, "This was open and shut." The defendant was found near the scene of the crime. A robbery turned violent. Surveillance footage shows someone matching his description. "We have an eyewitness. This is not a difficult case, ladies and gentlemen. This is a matter of public safety." Regina listened without blinking. The footage was grainy. The match was vague. Hood up, baggy jeans, sneakers. Could have been anyone. But to everyone else on the jury, the image felt obvious. Regina watched their eyes, the way they leaned forward, nodding, accepting, as if they wanted to believe it already, as if the burden of proof had quietly shifted from the state to the boy. The witness, a middle-aged white man named Doyle Gerson, spoke with too much certainty. "I saw him, running, hoodie, same face. I knew it was him." The defense attorney, a young, overworked public defender named Malik Owens, barely scratched at the testimony. He looked nervous, hands shaking slightly, fresh out of law school, unpolished, passionate, but overwhelmed. Regina's stomach twisted. She'd been there once, before she knew the cost. In the jury room, after court recessed for lunch, the tension wasn't open yet, but it was starting to boil under the surface. "Seems pretty clear," muttered one of the men. Carl, she thought, mid-60s, smelled like tobacco and peppermint. Why would he run if he was innocent? "Because he's a kid," Regina said quietly, not looking up. "Kids run when they're scared." Carl raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. Olivia, the woman with the designer tote, flipped through her notes. "I mean, the footage shows someone who looks just like him. You really think it's not him?" "I think we're supposed to be asking what the state proved," Regina replied evenly, "not what we assume." That earned her a pause. He's a long one. Then Peter, the impatient one with the sunglasses, smirked. "You sound like a lawyer or something." "I'm a teacher," she lied. "Middle school." "You get good at listening." The silence returned. But something had shifted. Just a crack in the wall. A small one. Still, cracks grow. And Regina knew all about fault lines, especially the kind that only show when pressure gets applied. She took another sip of her cold coffee. It didn't matter. She wasn't here for comfort. She was here for the truth, even if she had to drag it into the light, one reluctant juror at a time. Lunch break ended with the sound of footsteps echoing off marbled halls. Regina walked back into the courtroom like she had in so many others before, but now she wasn't behind the bench or in front of it. She was just one of 12. She liked it that way. It gave her room to study. Not the case. The people. Peter came in laughing with Carl. Their kind of laugh. Big, empty, confident. Carl said something about city crime bleeding into the suburbs, and Peter replied with a joke about hood rats learning to jog. Regina didn't react, but her jaw set. She took her seat, smoothed her skirt, and watched the defendant. Still, statue still. His name was Deshaun Taylor. No priors, no voice in this room, really. The judge asked him questions. He nodded or said, "Yes, sir." That was all. He had a court-appointed suit, one size too large, and shoes with scuffs on the toe. Regina noticed the way he held his hands together tight in his lap, like he was trying to disappear inside himself. She had seen that look before. Too many times. The prosecution called a detective next. Klein, 40-something, hardened face, spoke like every word had already been tested in court 20 times before. "We responded to a 911 call about an attempted robbery near 34th and Weston. Victim said he was attacked, saw the assailant flee. Officers canvassed the area and found Mr. Taylor less than 4 blocks away. He matched the general description and was brought in for questioning." Regina leaned forward slightly. "No weapon recovered, no stolen property on Deshaun, no injuries, no fingerprints, just match the general description." "And what description was that?" "Hoodie. Black male, late teens. That could have been half the kids at the bus stop." Klein kept his voice even, assured. "We have the footage. We have an eyewitness. The timeline fits." The ADA smiled like that was gospel. Regina glanced at the jury. Carl nodded slowly, like it all made sense now. Olivia tilted her head and scribbled something in cursive on her notepad. "Peter?" He yawned, but Regina looked closer. She caught the detective's micro-expressions, the way his mouth pulled tight when he referenced Deshaun, the subtle emphasis on, "We found him near the scene," like proximity was guilt, like presence was proof. The defense cross-examined with hesitation. "Detective Klein, did Mr. Taylor have anything on him that linked him to the scene?" "No, but..." "Any weapon?" "No." "Did he admit to the crime?" No, he denied it. And the footage? Can we see the face clearly? It's blurry, but the build matches. Regina watched Malik Owens as he struggled to stay calm. He was young, maybe too young. She didn't hold that against him, but she also knew this case needed someone who could punch through concrete with words, and Malik was punching water. Court adjourned early that day. "We'll resume tomorrow at 10 a.m., the judge said. "You're dismissed." Back in the jury room, the atmosphere was changing. More talk, more assumptions. Peter threw himself into his chair like it was a couch. "Well, this ain't rocket science. He ran. They found him. No weapon? Sure, but come on. How many guys you know just happen to match the exact time and place of a robbery and then run?" Regina didn't respond immediately. Carl chimed in. "He was close by. He had a hoodie. The witness said it was him. And this isn't the first time, you know." Regina raised her eyes. "First time?" "Boys like him," Carl said, adjusting in his chair. "Always in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe they're just always in the same place when something goes down." There it was. She took a slow breath. "That's not evidence. That's assumption. We don't convict people on patterns you've imagined." Carl frowned. "No need to get defensive." "I'm not defensive," Regina said. "I'm careful." Peter tossed a pen onto the table. "Look, we've all seen the news. These neighborhoods, these kids. There's a reason crime stays in one zip code. Or maybe it's because of the way justice is zip-coded too," Regina said, her voice steady. "You ever think about that?" Olivia looked up from her notes, surprised. Peter leaned back and raised both hands. "Hey, don't make this about race." Regina leaned forward, folding her hands. "You just made it about race when you said, 'these neighborhoods, these kids.'" "I'm just pointing it out." The room went quiet. Tight. Electric. Regina didn't blink. Peter sat up, rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly more interested in the water bottle beside him. No one said anything else. The foreman, a quiet Asian man named Thomas, broke the silence gently. "We're not deciding anything yet. We still have more witnesses to hear tomorrow." That calmed them a little. The silence settled back in. Regina let it. She wasn't there to fight them all at once. Not yet. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan in her tiny studio apartment. The silence was thick. No law books on her nightstand, no court briefs, just a Bible and a photo of her dad from when he marched in Selma. He used to say, "The law isn't about the loud ones, Regina. It's about the one voice that refuses to join the lie." She thought about Deshawn. She thought about the way his eyes scanned the jury, pleading without She thought about Carl's words. Boys like him. No, not boys like him. People like him. Like her. Expected to prove innocence harder than others had to prove guilt. She sat up and opened her notebook. No one in that room knew what she really was. A former litigator, a strategist. She used to break down cross-examinations like chess games. But this wasn't a chess match. This was war. And war needed patience, precision, control. She wasn't going to argue. Not yet. That would push them away. She was going to plant seeds. Let doubt grow like weeds through concrete. Let truth sprout in the cracks. She scribbled a few notes and underlined 3 words. Burden of proof. Tomorrow, she'd start there. And maybe, just maybe, start to turn the tide. The courtroom felt colder the next morning, not in temperature, but in energy. Everyone came in quieter, more careful, as if something had shifted overnight. The jurors avoided each other's eyes more than usual, except Peter, who gave Regina a brief, tight nod. She returned it without warmth. Regina kept her expression blank as she sat, but inside, her mind was moving fast. She hadn't slept much. The trial wasn't about the evidence anymore. It was about perception. It was about what people wanted to believe. She stared at Deshawn again. His shoulders were slumped lower than yesterday. The suit still didn't fit. His eyes looked more distant. Even kids learn to mask their fear eventually. The defense was finally calling its first witness. A woman in her late 50s took the stand. Miss Yvette Calloway. She was the manager of a corner store near the site of the crime. "I know Deshawn," she said, voice clear but nervous. "He comes into my store all the time. Polite. Quiet. Never caused trouble." The prosecutor objected to anything resembling character testimony. Sustained. Malik Owens regrouped. "Miss Calloway, do you remember the night of the incident?" "Yes." "Did you see Deshawn Taylor that night?" "Yes, I did. Around 6:45 p.m. He came in for a soda and chips, paid in cash." "What time was the robbery reported?" "Almost 7:10. Malik turned toward the jury. "Do you know how long it takes to walk from your store to the crime scene?" 20 minutes, maybe 25 if you're walking slow." "Thank you, Miss Calloway. No further questions." The ADA stood. "You didn't provide a receipt from that transaction, did you?" "No, I didn't. It's a cash-only register." "So there's no video, no timestamp?" "A camera broke 2 weeks ago, still waiting on a replacement." "Then how can we be sure you're remembering the right date?" Ms. Calloway's voice trembled a little, but she looked directly at the jury. "Because that's the last time I saw him before he got arrested, and because I remember thinking he looked tired that day, like something was weighing him down." The ADA paused, then gave a polite, insincere smile. No further questions. In the jury room during break, the atmosphere was less certain. Carl shifted in his chair and tapped his pen on the table. "Still, doesn't prove anything. Just because he bought a soda doesn't mean he didn't do it." "But it does affect the timeline," Regina said calmly. "You can't be in 2 places at once." Peter shrugged. "She's just a store clerk, not exactly bulletproof testimony." Regina turned toward him. "Peter, if that clerk were a retired nurse in the suburbs saying she saw a white kid at a mall during a robbery, would you believe her?" He paused. "That's not the same." "It's exactly the same." Olivia shifted in her seat. She hadn't spoken much, but she was listening more now. Regina could see the wheels turning. Thomas cleared his throat. "It's not about who the witness is. It's whether their story fits the facts." Regina nodded, thankful. "And the facts are? No physical evidence, no fingerprints, no stolen property, no weapon. Just a kid who looks like someone in a hoodie in a blurry video." Peter scoffed. "And an eyewitness." Regina leaned in slightly. "Let's talk about that." The next witness was Doyle Gerson again, back for a brief redirect after the defense requested clarification on his original testimony. Malik stepped up. "Mr. Gerson, you testified that the person you saw fleeing the scene wore a dark hoodie?" "Yeah." "You also said you saw his face?" "Correct." "How far away were you?" "Maybe 20 feet. Was it daytime?" "It was around dusk." "Was the person running?" "Yes." "Was it raining?" "No." Malik took a step forward. Regina noticed his voice steadier than the day before. "Mr. Gerson, how long did you see the person's face?" "I told you, maybe 2 seconds." 2 seconds in motion from 20 feet away in fading light." "Yes." "Is it possible you made a mistake?" "No." "Have you ever misidentified someone before?" "No." "Are you trained in identification procedures?" "No." "Do you know how often eyewitnesses get it wrong?" Objection. Sustained. Malik stood still for a beat. No further questions. Regina watched the jurors. Olivia frowned and looked at her notes. Carl scratched his jaw. Thomas was nodding slightly again. Peter looked bored, but no longer smug. The cracks were forming. Back in the jury room, Regina kept her tone gentle. Do you know the Innocence Project says eyewitness misidentification is one of the leading causes of wrongful convictions? Peter looked up. Oh, come on. Are you saying the guy just imagined the kid's face? No, Regina said. I'm saying memory is fragile. It doesn't work like a video camera. You saw that yourself. He said it was 2 seconds, running, low light. That's not reliable. That's human, Carl grumbled. You're making it sound like we can't trust anything. You can trust evidence, Reggie replied. Hard evidence, not guesses. Peter crossed his arms. It still doesn't explain why Deshawn ran. Regina's voice softened. I want you to imagine you're 17. You hear sirens. You're in a neighborhood where your friends have been stopped and frisked for no reason. You look like the suspect. You know that. What do you do? Peter didn't answer. No, really, she said. What do you do? Do you stay and explain, or do you run because you don't believe they'll listen? Peter looked away. Olivia bit her lip. Thomas broke the silence. I think we need to go back through everything. All the evidence. No assumptions. Just facts. Carl muttered. Sure. Regina looked at him, then at the others. If we're wrong, and we convict him, that's his life. That's a kid who won't get to finish high school, who won't see his mom again without glass between them. The room went still. No shouting, no heat. Just wait. Peter finally spoke, quieter than usual. All right, let's take another look. Regina sat back. The tide had shifted again. Not all the way, but it was moving. And that was enough for now. The final day of deliberation began with silence. No one wanted to be the first to speak, not even Peter. They had gone over everything twice already, but Regina knew this was the morning it would count. It wasn't about the facts anymore. They had them. It was about what those facts meant to each person sitting around the table. Thomas passed out the notepads again. Let's just do one more vote. No pressure. Just write it down. Everyone scribbled their answer, folded the paper in half, and handed it to him. He counted them slowly, eyes scanning each one. Then he looked up. 10 not guilty, 2 undecided. Carl didn't flinch. Olivia stared at her pen like it held the answers she didn't want to give. Regina leaned forward. Can I ask you both something? Carl raised an eyebrow but nodded. If Deshawn Taylor were your grandson, or your nephew, or just a neighbor's kid you saw grow up, would this evidence be enough for you to send him away? Carl's lips pressed into a line. Olivia looked toward the floor. We're not supposed to let feelings guide us, Olivia murmured. Exactly, Regina said. Which is why we stick to the facts. The facts don't put a weapon in his hand. They don't place him at the scene beyond reasonable doubt. They only show that he was nearby, that he looked similar, that someone thought they saw him. If that's enough to convict, then no one's safe. Carl let out a long breath through his nose. My brother got picked up once, he said, surprising the room. Wrong place, wrong time. Took him 2 days to sort it out. He's never been the same since. He looked down, then back up. I didn't see that kid before, but I see him now. He reached for a pen and scratched something out on his notepad. Olivia was last. She hadn't spoken much the whole trial, just took notes and kept to herself. But now she lifted her eyes and looked straight at Regina. I wanted to be sure, and I was holding out because I thought maybe the system doesn't get it this wrong anymore. She smiled sadly. But maybe it still does. She nodded. All right, I'm ready. Thomas looked around the room. So, that's 12? Regina exhaled quietly. 12 hearts shifted. 12 minds changed. Back in the courtroom, the room was packed. Press in the back, court officers on edge. The judge glanced over the bench, expression unreadable. Regina saw Malik Owens straighten his tie nervously, lips moving like he was whispering a prayer. Deshawn sat frozen, eyes darting between the jurors and his attorney, hands clenched so tight his knuckles turned pale. The foreman stood. We, the jury, in the case of the People versus Deshawn Taylor, find the defendant not guilty. A sound escaped the courtroom. Not a cheer, not applause, just a collective breath. A release of tension that had been wound too tight for too long. Deshawn's eyes widened. He blinked, confused at first, as if he didn't hear right. Then his shoulders dropped, and his lips parted, like he was going to say something but forgot how. Regina looked at him once more, and this time he saw her. He nodded. So did she. Outside, the sky had turned blue. Sunlight touched the courthouse steps. Reporters buzzed around the entrance, but Regina kept walking past them. She didn't need to talk. That moment wasn't about recognition. It was about balance. Restored. Just a little. Malika caught up to her near the bottom of the stairs. "You're not really a teacher, are you?" Regina paused, then smiled. "No, I'm not." He laughed, shaking his head. "I knew it. I kept wondering how you kept your cool in there. You ever practice?" "Used to. I'm not in court anymore." "Maybe you should be." She didn't answer that. Not yet. They stood in silence for a second before he added, "Thank you for not giving up on him. Or on me." She looked at him and said, "You did good. You just needed a little backup." He nodded, then turned to join Deshawn and his mother, who were hugging near the curb. Regina watched the boy's mother cry into his shoulder. Deshawn didn't move for a while, just held her like he never wanted to let go. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud, but it was powerful in a way that made your chest ache. A life spared, not because of a system, but because someone refused to stay quiet. That evening, Regina walked into her apartment and kicked off her shoes. Her blazer slid off her shoulders and landed on the back of the couch. She stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle. She walked to her desk. The photo of her father stared back at her. The same proud eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses, arm-linked with others marching down a dirt road decades ago. She picked it up, held it to her chest for a moment. Then she sat down and opened her laptop. She clicked a tab she hadn't touched in 5 years. Bar application renewal. Her cursor hovered, then clicked. 3 weeks later, Regina Poverly walked into a small community legal clinic on the south side. The office was plain. 2 desks, 1 bookshelf, and a fresh pot of coffee that smelled like burnt toast. A young assistant smiled at her from the front. "You must be Regina." She nodded. The assistant pointed toward the door. "He said you could just go in." Inside, Malik Owens looked up from a stack of intake files, eyes wide with surprise. "You weren't kidding." Regina grinned. "Told you I wasn't done." He chuckled and pushed a stack of folders across the desk. "Well, counselor," he said, gesturing to the empty seat beside him, "we've got a full docket." She sat down, took a folder, opened it, and began again. This time, not in secret. This time, exactly where she was meant to be.